One thing that you've probably heard before is that a great facilitator is able to be really flexible, right? So there's always going to be things in the session that will come up, maybe disruptions, maybe it's something you weren't expecting, something might take too long. All of this stuff is bound to happen. So a really great facilitator needs to be able to deal with it. But it's kind of easier said than done, isn't it? How do you actually be flexible? How do you deal with things that come up that you weren't expecting, all on the fly? That's what this video is going to be all about. This is the first video that I'm making where I'm sitting down, and I can already, I don't know, it just feels weird and different. I'm not sure if I like it. It's a test. We're testing it. Okay. Hi, I'm Brittany. I'm a workshop designer and facilitator. I also host a lot of corporate events. Welcome to my channel. If you are interested in learning more about facilitation, running sessions with groups, workshops, blah, blah, etc., then I would suggest that you subscribe to my channel. I would be so honored to have you here. And if this video is something that you enjoy, please give it a like. If you have any questions or comments about the things that I'm talking about, please drop those in the comments below and I will answer them. So a big reason why it's important to be able to be flexible with your agenda and when you're in the room with a group of people is that you just never know what's going to happen. There could be this really great flow of creativity or a really powerful discussion happening. And just because you have in your agenda that you only had 10 minutes for this doesn't mean that that's the right thing to do. As the facilitator, you are in charge of your session, right? So you need to be able to adjust and adapt depending on what's going on in the room. Now, I'm going to give you very, very simple ways that you can actually do this. And these are things that you can literally apply in your next workshop, even if it's happening tomorrow. The first tip that I'm going to give you is kind of obvious, but oh so important. Always plan buffer time in your agenda. This is really critical. So it's so much easier if you have a little extra time than if you are running out of time, right? Much easier to adjust. You can give people longer breaks. You can let them allow them a little bit more time for some discussions. Always plan buffer time. It's a non-negotiable as a facilitator. Don't ever go into a workshop that's timed minute by minute by minute, because likely you will need some buffer time. Likely you'll need a lot of buffer time. So definitely make sure to plan that in. Number 2 is plan for everything to take a little longer than you're anticipating. So let's say if you have an exercise and you're like, this should take about 15 minutes. Block 20 minutes in your agenda. Just do it. What will happen there is it will give you a little bit more wiggle room just in case it's going really great and you want to give a couple extra minutes, or if you think of some cool way to add a little piece of an exercise onto what you're doing. This will just give you that wiggle room. It will give you that flexibility, right? So just plan for every exercise to take a little bit longer than you think it actually will. Number 3, this is kind of a cool tip. This one is really helpful, especially if you're working with a few new activities or a new group and you're not really entirely sure of the dynamic or, how things are going to go or how talkative the team is going to be. This is something that I really love to do. Basically, what I do is I have time-adapted activities. So basically, I'll have a certain exercise and I have a regular version of it that maybe takes 20 minutes. And then I have an adjusted version of it that takes maybe 15. And then I have a nice quick version that takes 8 minutes. And this way, as I'm going through my agenda and as things are progressing, I can see how much time I actually have and I can use the version of the exercise that makes sense for that moment. Right? So just having in mind a few tweaks that you can make to those key exercises in your workshop to make them a little bit shorter or even a little bit longer is what's going to help you be able to stay super, super flexible and fluid. Number 4, I think this is one of the best facilitator tips ever, and it is just that you should not share the exact timings of your agenda with your participants. There's no reason they should need to know that. They need to know when the breaks are and when it starts and when it ends, right? But that's it. The reason that I don't share exact timings with my participants is that in case I'm adjusting things, which I always am, I don't want them to be then looking at the agenda and saying, oh, this exercise, we're gone way over time on this exercise, and this other exercise, we spent way less time. What's that about? Oh, obviously we're off track and things aren't going according to plan. Basically, you will risk losing that trust and confidence from your team in you as a facilitator. So just giving them the outline of the agenda of what you're gonna do and achieve together. You can tell them the exercises, but there's just no need for you to tell them the time, like play by play. They don't need to know it. It just causes confusion and potentially difficulties down the line. And number 5, this is another kind of like secret facilitator trick. If you are using a time timer, or any type of device to give the team a certain amount of time for an exercise, remember that it's your job as the facilitator to navigate that. So just because you say, okay, everybody, I'm gonna give you 5 minutes for this, doesn't mean that you actually have to give them the full 5 minutes. If you see that everybody is like wrapping up or people are starting to talk at about 3.5 minutes, just turn that dial and all of a sudden time is up, right? So it's your job to be super flexible with your timings. If you think people need more time, then you're able to give them a little bit more time. There's nothing wrong with setting 5 minutes, and then once the 5 minutes is up, I ask my team, does anybody need another minute? I always ask it that way and not, is everybody done? Because that just causes confusion. But if you ask if anybody needs another minute, you'll get the 1 or 2 people to raise their hand, and then you can give them a bit of extra time. But just keeping that time flow flexible and making sure that you're not wasting time by, because you gave everybody 8 minutes, but they finished everything in 6, right? So just keep that in mind, that you need to be flexible with the timings that you're given, and nobody knows 6 minutes from 8 minutes. You know what I mean? At least most people don't. So no one's gonna know anything, and it's your job as a facilitator to negotiate your timings the whole way through. So there are 5 tips for how you can keep your agenda really flexible on the go and in your session. One thing that I like to remind people is that it really is important to stay flexible. I'm a big fan of planning a pretty rigid agenda, but I always know that there's gonna be adjustments made. Sometimes I might even take an activity and not do it at all, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Don't feel like you have to stick to this plan or agenda that you outlined, because if something's not working, then you're gonna need to tweak it. That is what makes a really excellent facilitator, okay? So trust your gut, go with your instincts, plan a little bit and prepare enough so that you are able to be flexible in the moment. Okay, that's all for this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you liked it, please give it a like below. If you have any questions or you want to share something that you found super helpful in helping you keep things flexible, I'd love to hear that in the comments. And if you are, this is the first video that you've watched on my channel, then I would just like to say welcome, and maybe you would consider subscribing. That would be super cool. I have my dog at my feet here, and I haven't brought him into a video in a little while, so I'm gonna do that. Gordon, do you wanna come on my lap? Yes, good boy. Okay, say hi to everybody. He looks so big when he's on my lap, but he's just a little guy. He's a snuggly boy. Aren't you, bud? Okay, bye everybody. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Right, bud? Gordon says rough. Gordon loves to stay flexible. Hey, you're up for anything at any moment, aren't you? Love you, buddy.